Oops, I was muted. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Janine, Kev, Shajia. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. We typically give a few people, or we typically take a few minutes to let people join in. So 11:03 or so is probably when we'll start the content. We also have a lot of people that registered just to get the recording. But yeah, about 11:03. Hello to the 831 area code. I think that's Southern California, if I have my area codes correct. Yeah, oh, Santa Cruz, Monterey, cool. It's Santa Cruz. Oh, how rude of me then to call you Southern California if you're Santa Cruz. You're like the beach without all the pretentiousness. Just kidding if anyone here is from Los Angeles. Naluka, hi as well. So about 11:03, we'll be getting started here. I also have a bunch of resumes. Shajia, I have your resume, so thanks for submitting that. You'll be getting a live feedback on it here. I also have another one from Anna and another one from Lisa Yip. If anyone wants to submit their resumes, they're welcome to as well. You can just do it in the chat. You can email Kevin at alwayshire.com, Kevin at alwayshire.com. And if not, I'm going to go on mute here for just a couple minutes. Make sure I've got fresh water. What's up, Chad? And,
how we doing?
Pretty good. I think it auto mutes you, Chad, just so you know. And Chad, I told the audience we're going to give it till about 11:03, and then we'll kind of start going into things.
Okay, great.
Cool. I think you're still on mute, by the way, and I'm going to go on mute myself now.
Mute. Am I still muted? Can you hear me?
I'm like, Chad, can you say something? But I'm on mute. And then I think I realized I just muted my computer volume too, like I turned it off. So I'm glad we have such an engaged audience that's willing to say when I'm wrong. So good job, because if not, we would have been spinning our wheels here. Hi, Lisa, also for joining. I think if this is the Lisa I'm thinking, we have your resume here, so we're going to be going over it. You'll get a brand spanking new resume here in just a second. Looks like it's about 11:02. We're looking good. Okay, so about 11:03, in about 1 minute, we're going to go ahead and get started. Yay. Looks like we got someone here hailing from Los Angeles, light and pretentious beach dwellers. Dang it, Kevin! I knew I was gonna eat my words. I lived in Los Angeles for a while, and I go down there still every so often. I worked for a company, Main Street Hub, that had a sales office there. They were since acquired by GoDaddy. So I really like LA. I don't have any of the classic LA San Francisco beef, but I do think it is like a funny rivalry. So thanks for playing along. Chad, how's it going over there?
Going well. Can you hear me, Gabe?
I can. You know, it helps if I turn my computer volume on.
There we go. There we go.
So apparently I help run a tech training organization too. So hopefully we don't have too many more of those mess ups, right? But all jokes aside, we're going to jump in just a second. I'm going to go through a quick agenda. Chad, I'm going to give you a second to introduce yourself as well. And then I have a bunch of resumes here that users have submitted, and then we're just going to go through it. So first thing I just want to share for a little bit of context, by the way, I have like some notes here. So if you see me breaking eye contact, that's why, everyone. First thing to help you get your head in the right position is that interviewing is a sale. The product being sold is yourself. The price of that product is your salary. and the buyer of the product is the hiring manager or the company. In fact, when a company wants to spend $50,000 on a new piece of hardware or software, they're going to invite multiple executives as part of that decision-making process. Same thing when the company wants to spend $50,000 or $100,000 on a salary. There's going to be multiple people involved in that process. So from a company's perspective, there is no difference spending $50,000 on a tool or spending $50,000 on a salary. And that's the first thing to help us understand the right way to approach interviewing, your resume. It's just something that's meant to help you sell. With that being said, think about things from also the recruiter's perspective. The recruiter has an ideal candidate. Recruiters are like salespeople. That's why likely if you've ever dealt with a recruiter, sometimes they come off as salesy. That's because if they don't hire enough people, they miss their quota, they're fired. And if they do hire enough people, they hit commission, they hit their quota, they get a bonus. So from the company's perspective, again, and the specific person, the recruiter, they're thinking about the ideal candidate. You want to try to match up to that. Now, with that being said, the reason that's important is because one of the things to keep in mind is the analytics and how important it is to be relevant with the language that you're referencing to the hiring manager. And we also have a couple notes on our website regarding these sales tips and interview tips. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, we have more totally free videos that we've recorded to help you with sales, help you with interviewing and things like that. So feel free to check them out on the website. That's really all I had in the beginning here for y'all. Just very briefly, 30 seconds or less on me. I'm originally from the Bay Area. Both parents are PhD psychologists. I played sports at a very competitive level. I played against Marshawn Lynch in football. I also didn't go to college, much to the chagrin of my PhD parents. So I'm kind of this melting pot of creativity, competitiveness, and human psyche, which is why I think I got into what I've gotten into. I love playing sports still on the weekend. I love business and competing, board games, you name it. So that's my brief intro. I've worked at small startups, public companies, things like that. Chad is a true baller. Chad, do you want to give a very brief background maybe on some of the roles or companies you've worked at?
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. So similar to Gabe, growing up, played sports, basketball, baseball, soccer, lettered every year. Was pretty good at soccer, but basketball was kind of my passion. But sports aside, I've been in tech sales since 2012, started at Salesforce, kicked down the doors there. Salesforce is a CRM. Most people are familiar with it. We have a big they have a big skyscraper now in San Francisco. So got my start as an ADR or BDR as they were known at salesforce.com. Have had the opportunity and pleasure to work at a few different companies. I worked at Meraki through an acquisition by Cisco. I also have worked at LinkedIn, and I currently work at a pre-IPO company called Samsara, which is sensor technology, Internet of Things. We have a $3.6 billion valuation. So at those organizations, Meraki, LinkedIn, and Samsara, I've been in a closing role, and so have really seen the benefits and the fruits of what would be a BDR or ADR labor. I use a lot of those skills today. It's crazy. You go through that time, and it's a very interesting time and a time to learn. And those skills, they really do stick with you. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm just anxious to kick things off here today.
Nice. Salesforce, LinkedIn, Cisco, this company that, how long has Samsara been in business?
3.5 years. We just did as a company $78 million to end Q4.
I was going to say, it sounds like $1 billion every year. 3.6 billion evaluation, 3.5 years in business.
Yep.
Not bad.
Yep.
So why don't we go into some resumes here? I haven't pulled up, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to share my screen. You'll still be able to see Chad and myself. Chad will have the resume as well, so we can look at it. I'll take points on feedback, and then I'll give you an opportunity. What you'll notice is that sometimes you have the same feedback, sometimes you disagree with me. Give it as it is. If it becomes redundant and there's nothing to add, we can just move on to the next bullet point, and we're literally just going to dissect everyone's resume line by line, top to bottom. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay, cool. So also to the audience, we don't have all the context on you. We don't know what jobs you're applying to, how many jobs you've been applying to. if you've even been sending this resume out, things like that. So we're going to try to give you the best feedback we can with limited information. Throughout this conversation, though, there may be times where your information could help us. So I might ask you, hey, Yip or Lisa, can you share what type of job you're looking for? And if you feel like it, if you're comfortable, you can just message us in the chat the answer, and it will help make the content even more relevant and specific to you instead of just general advice. So with that being said, why don't we go into the first one here? So I'm pulling it up, and you're going to see me kind of click around my screen share. So I have to activate it, application window. Here we go. So it should be up now. We're loading. Chad, is it up for you?
I see a black screen.
Then I'll take that.
There we go. There we go. It just popped up. There we go. Yep.
Okay. And audience, you should also be able to see it as well. If you can't, let us know. But I'm assuming if Chad can, yeah, it looks like it's good to go. Okay. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to start with a couple points top down. And then after a couple points, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to give it to you, Chad, okay? And then we'll just kind of bounce back and forth as we go through the resume. So a couple things here. First off, overall, what I like is it's one page. Resumes have to be one page at this point. If you can't explain your own success in one page, how are you ever going to explain anything on behalf of a company, right? So you really got to know what is strong about yourself and how to articulate your own success in a concise manner, because a lot of business in any department is about effectively communicating vital information in the most concise manner possible. So great job here. So let's go into some specifics. Hotmail, name, medium. Okay, I like the medium. I like the name. Personally, I would judge you a little bit for having a Hotmail. I would judge you for having almost any Hotmail, Yahoo, AOL. I'm judging you a little bit, just so you know. I'm a UX researcher who uses research tool strategy and technology to understand people, problems. Okay, I've worked in 30 projects, 50 mentees, 12 publications, 10 certificates. Okay, I'll take a quick break here. I'm going to say something, then I'll give it to you, chat. I mentioned the email thing. The 30 projects, 50 mentees, 12 publications, it's a little confusing to me because it doesn't really tie into your intro summary. So like it's good data, but it doesn't necessarily connect to each other, at least not automatically for me. So it just makes me pause and think about the connection. And that creates a little bit of a stall for me. Instead of like a super excited momentum builder, it's more of like this looks cool, but I got to dig deeper. So I've already shared a couple thoughts here. Let me pause. Chad, agree, disagree, anything to add?
Yeah, the first thing I thought as soon as this resume popped up was the metrics, actually. So ironic you brought that up. It is eye-catching, but it's also confusing because we're not really sure where these metrics fall in line with the experience that you've had in your career. So these just look like numbers. Maybe they are impressive. It's hard to really understand. But what I would want to see, I think, is these metrics underneath each experience level. And so as that relates to your growth and the work you've done, I don't necessarily need you to do math for me to tell me that you've done over 30 projects. I would just like to know what projects you worked on under each role that you've already had. That's just me kind of thinking around those metrics and why I was maybe confused.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways someone creating a resume could do that, because I totally agree with what you're saying. Number one, in general, just include that in your experience. And number two, going to some specifics here, when you look at your experience should be accomplishment driven, not responsibility driven. Because especially if you're applying for someone who's in UX, they know what a user experience researcher does. Mm-hmm. There's no real value in explaining to me what the researcher does. You're interviewing with someone, like they know what it is. What they want to know is, were you the best researcher on your team? When 3 other researchers quit, did you stay there and get promoted to lead researcher? Or did you help lead a research project that led to $1 million in funding? So most people that you're interviewing with will already know what the responsibilities are. They just want to know if you were the best. So that's where you can also take these numbers, right? So user experience researcher at Wavin. Maybe the first thing could be led projects on this task, and this task, worked with clients for this company, or this company. Another example could be consistently delivered projects within budget and within timeline, or maintained a 100% maintained, what do you call it when you turn it in? When maintained a 100% timeline deliverability rate, right? So move these numbers into your experience, and instead of telling me the role, you should be telling me what you accomplished in that role. If you look at UX consultant for startups, your second bullet, developed and executed design concepts as a remote team, including grant writing that secured $200K in funding. That is what is important for me to hear as an interviewer. Your entire experience should basically be brag points like that. I'll take a quick break here before I continue with feedback I have on the resume. Chad, anything to add, disagree with what I've mentioned so far?
I would just echo. I think it's important when you're writing out your resume that it is results driven. There's a lot of people doing a lot of the same stuff as you, as I, as Gabe. It's how you differentiate yourself based on the results you've provided. So to me, I agree. And the metrics that you have are great. I would just want to know how they apply to each role you've had and any results that come from that, 30 plus projects and 50 plus mentees. To me, honestly, it's almost doing yourself a disservice. Saying that you've had 50 plus mentees, it's like almost fluff to me. And I would dock you serious points because to me, you're just overselling when I don't care how many mentees you had. I would rather know like what you accomplished with those mentees or what your mentees accomplished through your coaching. I think is way more valuable than the number 50.
Great feedback. Totally agree. Lisa, I saw your chat as well. It looks like you had a question or context for your reference. So I'll pull up that chat in just a second here. Well, actually, let me just make sure it's not relevant to what we just did. Nope. Okay, cool. Yep. So let's keep going here. So you see the skills on the right. I prefer to put the skills either in, you should just embed skills into your resume. So in your description, in your summary, you should be using keywords that are skills, or in your experience, you should be listing the skills, right? So in your experience, it could say, led a team of 50 mentee user researchers, launched 3 prototypes that landed proposals with Oracle and Facebook. So you can just take all of these skills and you can add them to your experience. Let's say you got promoted. Let's say it was like, how do you know you have grit? I'm going to guess you were part of some startup that had like a lot of layoffs and like you kept going and there was some type of success or something. Or maybe you got rejected a ton of times and then you overcame. You can put that in your experience. Was one of 3 original user experience researchers that were onboarded. The other 2 were let go, but through my grit and perseverance, I stayed on board. I managed the entire user experience department, which resulted in a 10% increase in profits and also me getting promoted. So I would take your skills, I would embed it into your resume as opposed to having it separate. You'll still catch all of the AI bots that are scanning. I would also do the same for tools. I would just use tools as part of your accomplishments in your experience. And yeah, I'll take a break there. Chad, any thoughts?
No, I think I would definitely agree with that for sure. It would just seem more organized as opposed to just a bunch of things put onto a page, hoping it makes sense. You're telling a story. And I think being able to convey and articulate your skills, the tools you're using through that story is more important than just itemizing. I think about myself, and when I'm writing my resume, it's tough for me to think about all of the tools that I know that I've used in my career that I'm competent in. I would use my language in the phone interview or the in-person interview to tell them about the tools that I'm using to get the results that I've achieved. as opposed to just itemizing them. That seems to be, again, not, to knock you or what you've done, but I just think you're doing yourself a disservice because you're making it seem more of a, I guess, less than desirable, thought out approach to your resume.
Yeah. And if you think about the user's eyes, you're totally right. So here's how the user's eyes are reacting. And this is just going to validate what Chad said. Literally read the resume. Your eyes probably go from like Anna to the numbers, to experience, to the skills, to the tools. So your eyes are literally doing this like cross-figured motion.
Right.
And then once you get to the bottom, let's say you do like the resume, where's the phone number? What do I have to do to contact you? Well, now I'm at the bottom of the resume. I have to scroll back up. So the user journey is just all over the place. And by the way, Anna, you're very accomplished. I mean, your education, your experience, you're a very accomplished, successful individual. None of this feedback is meant to say anything aside from that. So just to clarify the point I was saying, this information at the top, your email, your website, your Medium link, I would probably put it at the bottom. Because if I'm looking at a resume, I'm probably not going to your Medium right away. I'm probably looking at your resume, and if I like your resume, maybe then I'll go to your Medium. So contact information, put it at the bottom, so by the time they get to the bottom, if they are interested, they just see the number, you're removing a step. And the less steps you have, the easier it is to convert. So that would be my feedback. I'm fairly biased to putting contact information and basically like a call to action at the bottom of your resume. So below your education. Chad, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Some people put their address too in their resume, and I do myself. I think if you're applying for a job within San Francisco, you want them to know you're in San Francisco, and vice versa. If you're in New York and you're applying for a job in San Francisco, then that shows that like you're willing to move because you want this job so bad. So I would even think about adding your address.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And if people at this modern day and age, you don't have to put your physical address if someone's paranoid. You could just put your street and city, right? So like, or even your city. You could put 2nd Street, San Francisco, 94158. Or put your address. But yeah, that's a great point. There's no address here. I would add it. Cool. Chad, we just cranked through our first resume. That was fun.
There we go.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to pull up another resume and then screen share it again. Okay. Next we have Shajia, Shajia. Okay, here's my screen share. Okay, here we go, everyone. Okay, Chad, you probably have the black screen, and then hopefully now it's going to pop up.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so we'll do the same format as the last one. Okay, Chad?
Sounds good.
Okay, so overall, I'd like the one page. It's the very first thing I look for. Great job. In general, I like how you have your GitHub listed in your LinkedIn, things like that. I'm guessing you're looking for some type of technical role. I'm just curious if someone would look at your GitHub before they would finish your resume. My gut would say they're not going to look at your GitHub before they finish looking at your resume. It's probably if they like your resume, they'll look at your GitHub. I also see we have a quick question in the chat, which is multicolor, yay or nay? Monotone resume. You know, I don't know if I've thought about that a ton or been asked that. In general, my instinct tells me that the multicolor would come off as a distraction, kind of like rainbowy. I would probably just go with a really crisp, dark black on like a nice piece of paper. Chad, any thoughts on color versus black and white?
Yeah, black and white for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going here. So the one page I like, so the information, GitHub, LinkedIn, website, etc. I would again consider putting that at the bottom. Also, notice how GitHub has the hyperlink separate to it, but when I get to your phone number and your email, it doesn't have the same format. Like the email here doesn't say email, and then the link, which to me makes the formatting off. It looks like your formatting is not consistent. And I get why you did it. You're trying to fit it all in the first line, but it's not I think it could be better maybe. So if you're going to have just your email highlighted, maybe you just have the word GitHub highlighted and you underlink that. Have LinkedIn highlighted and you underlink that, just so that your formatting is more consistent. It kind of just looks weird to me even with just the phone number here sticking out. So that's something maybe to keep your formatting consistent. Take your contact info to the bottom. Overall, I like your summary, and I'll take a quick pause there. Chad, any feedback or any additional thoughts on what we've covered so far?
No, I agree. That was the first thing I saw was actually the phone number. It doesn't fit in with that banner, if you want to call it a banner.
Yeah.
Moving that to the bottom, I think makes a lot of sense. And then as well as your email and even an address or some sort of physical location identifier.
Right, and if you just hyperlink GitHub, LinkedIn, and website, you probably have enough room to add an address as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you see how everyone in the summary, how he's using some of his skills in the summary. So whether or not you're going to put skills, don't put it as its own thing. Chad says sometimes leave it for the interview. I think that's fine too. Here in the summary, though, if you have your skills listed, it still picks up in the resume screen, right, by the machine. So you don't need to put it in your summary and in your skills. But good job putting it in your summary. Education I like, but nowadays, Chad, what would you say is more important, education or experience?
Experience all the way.
Right, because it's your ability to do the job. So because experience is more important to the modern employer, you're going to want to put that higher on your collateral, higher from a marketing perspective. So your name, your summary, your experience. It's just so much cleaner. Like, is your summary more important than your phone number? No. So it should be your name, your summary, your experience. Education should be at the bottom of your experience, and then maybe projects below that, or maybe actually projects before education, if projects are more like work experience. I think that's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go into specific feedback on each job. Chad, did you feel that was pretty straightforward, or anything to add to that before we go into the specifics?
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thrown off with the education at the top. That's usually safe for the bottom. And very quickly put degree, year of graduation, and your university. Looks like there's 3 different things going on. Any sort of certificates or courses that you've done as a one-off, unless it's, I don't know, Oxford or like the most ridiculous university in the world. Stanford's one. You know, there's some prestigious Harvard, right? I don't know if I'd put those. I think you can articulate that on the interview or at some point in your experience. So I'm just seeing Udacity. I don't know if I'd include that. If it's important, then do it. But I guess I'm on the fence on that.
Yeah, because like Bachelor of Arts in Journalism from San Francisco State, like, okay, props. You graduated from San Francisco State. Nano degree in Udacity, I'm like, cool, you paid $10 to be one of the billion users Udacity has. Like, it's really not impressive. Like,
I agree. I'm not sold on that at all.
Right. So maybe what they could do here is keep the Bachelor of Arts in Education. If you want to list these things if they're relevant, the nano degrees, maybe those are better under projects. Or maybe you relabel your project section as like extracurricular, or you give it a term that's a little bit more like liberal, like a term that's a little bit more all-encompassing, and list your nano degrees under projects as opposed to listing it under like education next to the San Francisco State accomplishment. Okay, so that was really good, Chad. I'm going to keep going here then. So let's go through the specifics. By the way, audience, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. So far, we have this resume, and then I believe we have Lisa's resume, and these are the last 2 resumes we have. Anyone that still wants to submit them, feel free to chat us or email us, and let's keep going here. So experienced front-end developer, Zglue. Okay, develop modules and components using Angular. Okay, so this is a great example, by the way, of how the skills are listed in the job, right? So that we're seeing kind of the feedback we gave on the previous one applied to here. What I would still like to see, though, as a front-end developer are your accomplishments. Did you release your app and had 1,000 users downloaded in the first month? Like, I'm guessing the reason you were building an app was because your company needed users, or it needed research, or it needed something. And I'm betting that the team was like, hey, I don't just need you to launch the app. we really need the app to launch and to accomplish this goal. You should be speaking to whether or not your team or your company help succeed in accomplishing that goal. Even if you're not the person in charge of the users, don't you still care that your app generated users if that's why your company hired you? So list those accomplishments in terms of what you were able to do with the software you built. Chad, anything to add to that?
No, I think that was straightforward.
Okay, cool. So skills are listed, accomplishments of the software is listed. Okay, add that portion. If we go into, so I'm going to just keep going through your roles here. I think when we look at the other stuff like web developer, intern, designing creative newsletter using MailChimp, again, I think our feedback for all of your experience, all four here will likely be the same. Great job using the skills, add a couple accomplishments. Under my projects, Chad, I'm still gathering my thoughts on the my projects, so I'll just kick it to you real quick. Any general feedback on the my projects?
Yeah, I was just reading through them. I guess I'm not really, are these organizations? What is My Reads? What is Would You Rather? I guess I'm unfamiliar with those both as a whole.
I agree. It's a little confusing. Like, it sounds cool, but it's confusing. So maybe be more clear here in terms of like volunteered or on the weekends or with my friends, or like give me some context so I understand how is this different from just your experience.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So those edits, projects, education, contact info at the bottom. And I think this resume right now is probably like a 7.5 out of 10. And if you make the small adjustments, this could very quickly get to an 8.5, 9 plus out of 10. Does that sound about right to you, Chad?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on this one before we go to Lisa's?
I'm good.
Cool. All right, so I'll stop this screen share, and then I'm going to pull up the next one. Lisa, yep. Okay, and Lisa also gave us some context, actually. So I'm going to turn on the screen share so we can all start seeing her resume, and then I'm also going to read out loud the context she gave. Hi, Chad and Gabriel. Hi, Lisa. For my resume, I'm aiming for a creative technologist or UX engineer role. Okay. UX engineer role, I understand. Creative technologist, do you mind explaining that to us a little bit? And then, Chad, let's dive in, shall we?
Yep.
And just to keep things fresh, you've been looking at this now for a few more seconds than I have. Do you want to kick off the initial feedback here of anything that stuck out, or do you want me to lead again?
Yeah, feel free to lead. I think we're doing good here.
All right, cool. Let's keep it going then. So here's what I see. So this is the two colors actually. I don't hate it. I think it's kind of cute, I think it's kind of cute, especially if you're doing user experience, right? Well, UX engineer, okay, here's what Lisa said too. UX engineer is someone who develops prototypes for design teams, but not necessarily production code. That for sure. It's more, yeah, so UX engineer, we understand, is just for, I wasn't sure what you meant by creative technologist, but it sounds like we're just talking about a user experience engineer. So I can see from a user experience engineer, maybe it looks cute to have the colors, but I think a true user experience engineer decides what looks cute and nice based on user feedback. So, and Lisa's actually, wait, I meant that for a creative technologist. Okay, so for a creative technologist is someone who develops prototypes for design teams, but not necessarily production-ready code. Yeah, so maybe that's like product manager or, product manager or UX. That makes sense. So I'll give you a very quick example of when you should use colors. Facebook used to have like a dark color blue for sign up, and now we have a lighter color blue. And that's because what someone did is they saw that, 1 million people a day were clicking sign up, and they tested changing the color of the blue from a darker blue to a medium dark to a light dark to an ultra light dark. And they saw, based on the difference in color, if the percentage of people that were on the website would click sign up at a higher rate. And when they're dealing with millions of people clicking sign up, changing a small color did make a huge impact. And that's how big websites decide what colors they should use and true user experience opportunities. The reason I share that is because I like that you're making it orange because you probably think it's cute, but unless you can definitively say I know my users prefer orange, I don't know if you're doing yourself any favors because you don't know if you're actually helping. So it seems like an unnecessary risk. That's my initial reaction between how it kind of looks cute, it kind of looks cool, to fully thinking through how I'm impacted as a user reading a resume with multiple colors. I would just be curious. Those would be the thoughts that come into my mind. So I'll pause there. It's kind of an abstract topic, but Chad, any additional thoughts on that topic or something similar?
No, I mean, I would just say the same thing, and that was actually really cool information. I was unaware of all of that. But I know that we said on the last resume we should do black and white, and I would actually stick to my guns in that regard. There is some color coordination here, so I think it looks cool. But I don't know. I would, just me speaking, I would traditionally stick to a black and white approach.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, one of the points I was making was that orange could work if you have data from your user suggesting they prefer it. But if you don't have any of that data, it's just a shot in the dark. And shots in the dark don't usually stack the odds in your favor. Right? So I think we're on the same page here. Let's keep going. Okay, so summary, 4 years, detail-oriented engineer with a knack in delivering elegant, responsive, user-friendly solutions. Okay, so I like this overall. Pretty good summary. Skills are not bad. I know a lot of times too, like engineering roles are hiring for very specific skill sets, but I still think that could be explained in your first experience. What I really like about your work, I mean, look at this. Works with a team of 7 to effectively execute 10 plus Dropbox projects with 100% on time. Lisa, did you literally just write this resume based on, it's like every resume is building on the feedback it's organically, right? This is almost like amazing. Chad, do you agree here how stoked you are reading this first bullet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this just gets my juices flowing. I want to work with you. I don't even know what we're working on. The fact that you just manage yourself to numbers and you know at the end of the day you have to help the business grow and you're held responsible to that, that's the type of engineer, product manager I want to work with. Now, here when you worked, it says collaborated directly. Here, maybe I would say how you collaborated. Maybe you used Jira. Maybe you used GitHub or GitLab to collaborate. So if you're going to take the time to tell me how you collaborated and you're not going to really list a lot of accomplishments, at least there is a likely point where you can reference your skills so that that bullet point still has value and you're still putting skills on your resume. Chad, any thoughts on that topic?
I was looking at the co-piloted underneath that. What is that? INYO National Forest. Co-piloted a project. That's really cool. I would want to know a little bit more about that as well. Was that something that you thought of? Is that your brainchild? Is that something that was bestowed upon you as a requirement for the job? I think co-piloting is a very big honor. So if there is any way that you could iterate on how that came to fruition, I think that would benefit you as well.
Absolutely. And look at your next bullet here, actually. Lisa created a user-focused desktop product using HTML5, CSS, JavaScript to interact with a CNC machine via Bluetooth. Like, it's okay for every experience to have the same format, which is like, I use Salesforce, I use Excel, I increase profits by 30%. Next job. I use Excel, I use Microsoft Word, I increased overall sales by 100%. Like, that's what work is. You use these tools, you drive results. So it's okay to have the same type of format because, again, your resume is just meant to get you the interview. They just want to be looking like, who is Lisa? 3 sentences. She's badass. She likes aggressive timelines. She worked for this company. They fundraised. They use HTML5. She worked for this company. They grew users 10x. She did JavaScript, right? So it's totally okay to be a little redundant. You're going to be using different words, but it's totally okay to use the same format. And I think if you just apply that, your experiences, they're almost already perfect. It's just that some of them are missing what some of the other ones have. And I'm guessing you probably just didn't want to be too redundant. I would say it's okay on the resume because you're not going to have the same skill in every job anyways, right? But it's okay to list the skills in every experience. Chad, any thoughts on what I just shared there?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. So let's keep going here. This looks like our volunteer. So this is another similar way, kind of like how the project person had it. But look, we have work, and then we have education at the end. And then if you want to put anything in the middle, that's where it goes. Whether that's volunteering, Udemy courses, military experience, any of the other things we mentioned, this is a great example of how to section it off.
Mm-hmm.
I also love volunteered 400 hours of wildflower triathlon. Great job with your numbers there. Let's go through education. Okay. Now this one's a little bit tricky, Chad, because this General Assembly education is similar to the Udemy. It's like in between, right? Because it wasn't it wasn't a nano degree. It looks like it was 2 months, but it's also definitely not a full accredited degree. So let's have you and I talk about the relevancy of the user experience design listed under education.
Yeah, I would go back to thinking around fluff versus value, and I do understand the value in that concentration. But is it needed? Is it something that you think sets you apart? And if that answer is yes, then always go with your gut. But I don't know the answer to that question. I think from my perspective, I don't know if it's that important to put in, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just to build on that, a couple of things here. When someone asks you, where did you go to school? If you just answer General Assembly or any school like that, I mean, we're a boot camp too. I don't think it's an acceptable answer. They're not replaceable. Now, if someone asks you, where did you get trained? You could say at a boot camp, where did you get trained in user experience? Oh, I got trained at General Assembly. That type of language with society, I think, is okay. Where did you go to school? I don't think someone would want to hear of a boot camp.
Right.
So you can still bring it up. It's still effective. It still shows you know the job. I just don't know if you want to mix it with education. So maybe instead of volunteer, you repurpose that group. And you call it like, I don't know, what are some of the other words? It could be like volunteer or volunteer/projects. Or maybe just call it projects. I mean, volunteering is a project, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you could call it self-development. Or self-improvement, or whatever you want. But I think you can start that extracurricular section with maybe your General Assembly experience, and then have your other 2 bullet points be more personal. And that's a way to include the General Assembly training experience, if you want, as opposed to putting it next to your BS in computer engineering. Like that thing should stand on its own.
I agree. I mean, Cal Poly, your degree is super important, very valuable, extremely crucial. And then lumping that in with the General Assembly, you don't want to devalue your Poly degree. General Assembly definitely has a lot of weight. It's a very notarized brand. A lot of talent comes through General Assembly. We want to make sure that you're itemizing it. But I would agree with Gabe that maybe reroute that into a different section, maybe even condensing it. I see a sentence there outlining what you did under those 2 months of work or 3 months of work. I don't know how important that sentence is, as it is affiliated with maybe a different section. So maybe some rework is needed there, but ultimately you're the boss of your own life. So if you like what you put here, I can't tell you that it's wrong or that it is right. I'm just kind of trying to look at this from a third-party perspective and maybe what would help you look the best, essentially.
Yeah, and Kevin brings up, we have a pretty good chat here that I want to share with the group. Kev says, I'm a bit biased because I'm a graduate of General Assembly. In tech, it is relevant. So I just want to clarify something. We never said it's not relevant. We just said don't put it in the education.
Right.
When people graduate from our sales boot camp, we put it on their resume. We just don't put it under education.
Right.
So we weren't saying it's not relevant. It is relevant. It likely is. You just need to be really careful what you're putting it by. And with all due respect, General Assembly and a bachelor's in computer engineering are not on the same level. And it's not because they aren't both extremely relevant and helpful. It's just because they're 2 different things, right? And they show that you've accomplished 2 different things. I mean, the BS in engineering shows that you committed to something for 4 years, you graduated, all these things. the experience from General Assembly shows that you care about today and you're able to work quickly, and they show off a completely different skill set than going through a 4-year program. So it's not that it's not relevant, it's just you want to be careful how you bring things up, because again, it's all about the sale and the conversation. And you likely would tell someone you graduated from General Assembly with a lot of pride. You just wouldn't necessarily use it in the same sentence you show off your computer engineering degree. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. If you also disagree with that at all, keep bringing in your chats, right? So we're happy to talk about this stuff. Notes on Lisa's additional section. Is that a best practice? You know, Chad and I had a little bit of a back and forth on this before, but I personally at this point really like having the additional, because what ends up happening on your resume is it becomes like such a machine, like name, summary, accomplishment, phone number, email, that a lot of times at the very end you can help someone break a smile by adding the additional, or they'll actually just ask you about it in an interview. And it's a really great way to start building rapport. So I personally like including something personal in this day and age of computers about yourself. It shows that even though you think like an Excel sheet, you still have a human side to you. So I don't know, Chad, if you have anything to add to that, but those were kind of my thoughts to answer Kevin's question, or Kev's question, excuse me.
Yeah. It's important to be yourself, be your true self, bring your true self and whole self to work. Being able to find common ground with who you're working with and potentially working with. And I think having yoga and travel enthusiasts in your resume is putting yourself out there and hoping that who you're going to talk to can associate with that. I will take a different stance on this and say that it's not something that I would include, but I get it. And I think putting it is in a way hoping that who you're going to talk to identifies with those different points, and then you have something else to talk about and you're building rapport, and that's only good things. So I definitely get it, and I think if you want to do something like that, it's definitely a great idea. Thinking back to the General Assembly, just really quick, maybe instead of additional, we do like continued education, and continued education could be traveling the world. Could be conversation in 2 languages that I picked up. Could be General Assembly, right? Continued education could be the best subject line on this section, as opposed to maybe additional. And then you're using travel as a way to obtain knowledge, which is, as we know, when we travel, certainly true. So maybe just spinning it in a different way as a thought. I don't know what you think, Gabe, about that.
I think that's pretty fresh. I mean, it's all about the story and the consistency. And I think that's great. That's great feedback. I also think it's good for not everyone to always be exactly on the same page, because to say that life has one path, obviously there's not only one bridge to success, right? And I think what's important also to kind of start wrapping things up is that a friend of mine was telling me about the most impactful thing a teacher ever said to them, and it was a philosophy teacher that they had. And the philosophy teacher was talking about all these different ways to look at life. And the student asked the philosophy teacher, well, what's the right way? Give me your opinion. What's the best way to approach life? And the answer was that there is no right way. Life is about understanding you have different lenses, and you need to come up to the conclusion of when it's appropriate to put each different lens on. And as long as you're able to find that flow and find that level of comfortability, you can take what you have and you can apply it to what the other person wants to hear or wants to see. But understand that there may be times where you need to come up with your own decision, or you need to go against the grain. And I think that's totally okay. So hopefully this has been exciting and this has been helpful. If you ask yourself, how effective is my resume? The answer should be based on the amount of interviews that you get. It's really important to remember that your resume, the definition of success on a resume is based on the amount of interviews it gets you scheduled. If you're going on site, you're meeting with companies, you're not getting an offer, the resume is not the problem. If you're submitting your resume and you're not getting called back for first round interviews, then that's how you can identify the resume as a problem. UC Berkeley Extension says that the nationwide average for resume to interview is 2%, which you've probably felt. It takes about 50 applications to get one interview. When you start tailoring your resume and also using creative outreach approaches, but when you start really focusing on that metric, you can get that number as high as 5, 10, even 20%. Meaning out of 100 applications, you'll get 5, 10, 20 interviews. So hopefully you can start to take a metrics-driven approach to identify whether or not your resume is effective. And hopefully some of these tools here help you better communicate to these hiring managers why they should spend the money on you as opposed to another person. Chad, that's what I had today. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that I left out?
No, I thought that the resumes were all very unique, which is what I was expecting. So that was good to see. Hopefully the feedback was valuable, and I really appreciate everyone's time as well as willingness to learn. I think having a growth mindset is the only commonality amongst the successful people I know in my life, and containing that and holding that is extremely valuable. So everyone on this call holds that characteristic. So kudos to you.
Yeah, seriously, kudos to you all. If you end up redoing your resume, you apply for a couple weeks, you're still looking for a job, you're always welcome to come back, resubmit version 2 of your resume. So keep us engaged as much as you'd like to be. We'll be sending out a recording as well. If you want more sales tips, we have a YouTube video up. We have sales training videos up as well. Chad, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for participating.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. See you later.
Take care.